What's up, everybody? Well, didn't make a video on the 4th or around the 4th like I probably should have, but around the 4th, I tend to do things that are a bit more fun than making videos that I have to sneak around to make. So, as always, watch some fireworks and, just had a really good time on the 4th. One of my favorite, I wouldn't say my favorite holiday, Christmas obviously will always be the best. See, I gotta get that situated to where it's illuminating my face. Perhaps I should just put that a little more that way so that I get some light on my face. But first, I want to unbox. I have waited long enough to leave any feedback. Cannot go anymore. But I have recently bought a couple of things. And I said I got an offer on a Pistol Pete, which I feel they didn't make enough of. I wish they would have made this little boy into so much more than just that. Like, he could have been, every year they should have had him. There was one blonde version of him, but there just weren't enough. They didn't do enough with the boys. Probably because the way it works out is that he tends to look shorter than the girls, even though his body is about the same height. So rather than, just do something about that, like give him a bigger hairstyle or, a head that's slightly longer, no, they'd rather just omit the boys. Just like on TV, omit the boys rather than try to work out the problems that they have. Like Cedric and all those other boys and Sophia the First, rather than, find workarounds, such as, a solution to Prince James going through the voice change. Either have a woman do his voice, or with computers, you would think that with AI, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. Computers should be advanced enough. If they can create, you could have a fake voice reading something, or you can create beautiful music without a person actually singing it. You would think computers would be advanced enough that even if a little boy changes, they could sort of tweak the audio to make his voice sound like it used to at this point in time. So, rather than find ways to deal with the boys or the men on TV and what their problems are and try to correct those problems, they prefer to just omit them, like they don't even matter. And that's what I hate. Just leave them out, omit them, write them out of the story. But, what's important about boy dolls is that they keep girl dolls from, being changed by me into short-haired versions of them, of their former selves. So, here's Pistol Pete without any shoes. I'm going to put some shoes on him. That's another thing. They could put thicker shoes on the boys to look taller. Where there's a will, there's a way, but they just don't want to find it. They'd rather just take whatever's wrong with the boys on TV as an excuse, or in dolls, as an excuse to simply not make them or not have them on. So, in addition to Pete, there were 2 of these Fibercraft Native American girls who were naked. They were like completely nude, and I put them in bathing suits for now. Because while I don't think, it's not that I see a problem, with Native American girls or that are dolls without clothes. It's just that I find that it's just better to make use of a bathing suit that wasn't doing any good. So, they're in bathing suits. And while the Native Americans may not have been known for bathing suits, that's good enough for now. And there was also a bonus gift, which I couldn't be more pleased with. It's a little gingerbread doll that they probably intended to be a girl, but I intend it to be a boy. Little gingerbread doll. And can't really take off the hoodie thing, but looks like a little black Tommy doll, and he's cute. He has dark hair and light eyes. So I couldn't be more pleased. Couldn't be more pleased. Just wish I had these things 20 years ago. So, those are the dolls in that package. And these are the dolls in the other package. For some reason, they were not shipped together. I asked for reimbursement, but instead got 2 packages that were shipped together the same day and came in on the same day. So here's a kid core Katie. You see, and that's why, this is what I mean. You see, when you put them together, it looks like she's taller than the boy. And, you know, rather than just, you know, make a version of this boy with a longer head or, you know, put thicker shoes on him. No, they just decided to phase him out. So there's Katie and Pete. And this was the main reason I bought that lot. And it's a Tootsie Girl doll. Which they did not make a lot of Tootsie Shelly dolls. I have several Mikeys just because somebody had collected a bunch of them. But Tootsie Shelly was rare. Like a British Kelly of sort. And then there's Kid Core Jody, the little one. She's like a Kelly. Only taller slightly. So, then, and she is what I wanted another time, but a seller bailed and said she was broken and reimbursed me. I think they just didn't want to sell her. But she would have come with that playset containing Cedric. And I didn't appreciate her at the time because I didn't like the fact that, you know, just like with all the other boys, they decided that her brother Flip wasn't anywhere near as important as she was. You know, the little red-haired boy who would have had a green tail and no shirt. His name was Flip. And he was like the Prince James of her family, the token boy. He had red hair and green eyes. And along with her teen sister Cora, well, there was a version of Cora that was made into a doll. But she was like glued to a rock. But for some reason, Una was the only one of the mermaids, and Sophia the First, that they saw fit to be put in a playset containing Cedric. So if you bought the Cedric, you had to have Una, as well as Ruby and Jade. So you had like, what, 7 girls, 2 boys, or something like that. So, you know, they didn't think Flip was important enough. You know, even though he had pretty green eyes and red-orange hair. So that was the reason I really wanted to buy Cedric and not the playset, because he was the only thing I really wanted out of that playset. And another James wouldn't have been that bad, but I already had a James. So here is Una, the mermaid. And I just think it would have been so much better if you could have bought a playset that was like this girl Una with her redhead brother Flip and her brunette sister Cora, a slightly taller mermaid. I think she has a purple or pink tail. And so you could have had a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead that's a boy. And I think Cora has purple eyes or something like that. Not sure of that. But she'd have brown eyes, and Flip would have green eyes, and Cora would have blue or purple eyes. So yeah, the world would be a much better place, you know, if more boy characters would have been made into dolls, and if more versions of Cedric would have been available, like Cedric all by himself. So, that being said, I got Una. Try to be careful with her because she's delicate. So, what I want to talk about, I want to end this video talking about Elio or Elio. And while I have no interest in seeing it or watching it, and there's a very good reason. You know, there's something people don't factor into the equation as to why every movie, you know, especially kids' movies, are bombing these days, as they call it, bombing at the box office. But then when they come out on Netflix or whatever they come out on these days, then they do slightly better. And there's a factor that people are not taking into consideration. And it's the death of the movie theater industry. You know, as I was talking about this town and how much it sucks in my last video like this, you know, we had a perfect example of this the very next day of what I was talking about, the horrible service at restaurants. We wanted to go to a popular fast food place, which I think this town might have too many of them. I'm not going to say the name. But we might ought to just have one. And probably the only McDonald's we really need is the one inside Walmart. That's the only one I ever go to, because it's like if Walmart is closer than the McDonald's that is just that, you know, why would I go somewhere further away that, you know, doesn't have the convenience of a Walmart and everything in it? You know what I'm saying? If I wanted McDonald's, I'd go to the one in a Walmart. So, we just don't have, we really don't have the population. I mean, we definitely have this demographic problem that nobody wants to acknowledge as to why this just isn't the world of the past. You know, it's a world of a bunch of baby boomers that increasingly don't want to go anywhere, don't want to do anything fun. You know, I was lucky to get to see fireworks on the 4th. Won't go into detail, but it was fun. So it's a bunch of boomers who have one foot in the grave and couldn't care less about seeing anything at the movies. You know, they'd rather watch John Wayne movie number whatever for the 500th time. You know, they'd rather just live in the past and watch the things they've enjoyed since they were kids, practically. And then you have these young people who have pretty much abandoned outdated forms of entertainment. You know, basically, if it isn't on their phone, they couldn't care less about it. And so, you know, then you have all these other populations who aren't white. And, you know, they have their own ideas about what they like to do. And so, perfect example of what I was talking about how crappy this town is. Anyway, had to go investigate anyways. And, you know, I got the candle on. I don't know how well that's going to work. Hope it won't burn the place down. But, you know, I was reading about the Elio thing and how, you know, people think that the reason it bombed, didn't do well at the box office, is because it was intended to be a gay film. And once they took out the gay stuff in this movie about an 11-year-old boy who personally, I find that the characters, they have a way of making all the characters look younger than they're said to be. I find that I'm starting to realize more and more that as much as I like cartoon children, for their ability to bring us dolls of such children and put dolls in stores, which unfortunately this movie isn't doing, much as I like animated human child characters as opposed to adults and animals, more and more I'm starting to realize that such characters are more for pedophiles than actual children. And what I mean by that is there seems to be something wrong with just about every cartoon where the main characters are human children. It seems like those are the ones where you find the most depraved, disgusting things hidden within them in various ways. They call it coding. And what I'm also learning is that in a lot of cases, if you think the final product is bad, it was going to be even worse before they deleted a bunch of scenes, is what I'm learning. It was going to be worse. And it's like that in every single case. The stuff they cut out is stuff that was just a little bit worse. So I'm finding that such cartoon human children, as much as I like them, and I like the merchandise, so much better than cartoon animals, dolls, not t-shirts. I'm finding that such characters, they really are. They're created by and for pedophiles, not children. Because realistically, the children that age would be just as happy seeing just almost anything, whether like animals, adults, superheroes that are adults, just about anything. They would watch just about anything you put in front of them. So the people truly involved in the making of such shows, and wanting them to exist are pedophiles. They're adults that have a thing for children. And that is why the characters always look so much younger than their age, but yet sound and talk older. They sound older and look younger. And it's like that in every single case. Every single case. The Rugrats are just the most extreme example of it. But Sophia the First was like that. Miles from Tomorrowland was probably like that. As Told by Ginger, pretty much, all these shows that I've become obsessed with. Jimmy Neutron, Hey Arnold, the one that, all these Disney movies, they just have that common denominator of when you draw the character, you think, oh my God, this is a picture of a toddler in a caricatured form, silly cartoon toddler. And it looks like that. They all look like that. They all have an infantilized look about them in some way, is what I'm noticing. Like if you had never heard their voice, ever. All these characters. Timmy on Odd Parents, he looks like he could be a Rugrat almost. But it's like every single one of them. If you ask me their age, before there was anything known about them, if you just showed me like a sketch of the characters and said, how old is this character? What kind of a voice should they have? Well, not a one of the male characters on any of these shows, would I imagine to have an adult voice. None of them. But of course, since you can't hardly find such things in the voice acting world unless you use all women, and it doesn't stay that way if you get boys, like on Rocket Power, then they have to kind of mismatch it in some cases. Or get men who think they can talk high, like kids, but are wrong. And so, I mean, every single case, it looks like, the drawings of the characters are severely infantilized in many ways. Sophia the First does not look like an 8-year-old at all. They just had to call her that. I mean, well, I still have the doll, but I mean, she's supposed to be the age of Sophia. Does that look like an 8-year-old? No, it doesn't look anything like an 8-year-old. Looks like a cartoon toddler mermaid. And, it's almost like they just kind of, they compromise a little bit. They take like an average of, how old the character looks with how old the character sounds, and they come up with an age somewhere in the middle. And I think it's like that on a lot of these shows. For example, Angelica being a diaper girl. I mean, she looks like a stupid freaking diaper girl of 1 or 2, like she's no older than Tommy, except she has hair. Okay, well, you average that with her sounding like a school-aged girl, let's say 6, or no, maybe 8. So 2 plus 8 is, well, let's say 2 plus 6 is 8, divided by 2 is around 3 or 4. So it's almost like they just pick a number between how old the character looks and how old the character acts. Like Timmy on Parents. He looks like a little kid, like a 5-year-old. But he's voiced by an adult, so that would put him more like a teenager, 15. And somewhere in between that is age 10, is what he's said to be. So it's almost like they just pick an age and, run with it. But I feel like these characters are always severely infantilized in their look. That's why they use such art styles as the Klasky Chupo and the cowl arts and other art forms, or art styles, to sort of detract from this. Make it less obvious, like they're so exaggerated that you wouldn't notice that. But I feel I'm starting to realize that cartoon humans are made for pedophiles, not children. And, it's just as I've stated before, when they're told no, that they can't push their agenda past a certain point, then they get mad. Then, they get all butthurt and want to, bail on the project. Well, I really think the reason Elio didn't do well is it's not because, anything to do with the gay stuff, which, unfortunately, little boys are being left out of cartoons and dolls because they're neither here nor there. They neither appeal to the male desire for superheroes and kicking the villain's butt, nor the female desire for beauty and glitter and pink, although she's wearing blue. So they don't really embody femininity or masculinity, and that's not going to appeal to anyone. But he represents this push, this diversity, this brown characters instead of white characters, with dark brown eyes, one of them having a patch instead of 2 beautiful blue eyes. Well, people are fighting back against it, and I'm glad. The same reason Elena of Avalor didn't do better, because we refuse, to not only be replaced, but like it while it's happening. It's like saying, you will be replaced and you will like it as it's happening. Hell no. So no, we're not going to go see movies about diverse characters as white people and be okay with it. See, that's the real reason. It's, the Latino aspect, not the gay aspect. Although, the fact that he wasn't very masculine, they think they can cram these things down boys' throats, that it's okay to like pink and it's okay to like rainbow sissified colors. Well, that's not going to fly, Gone are the days of Timmy on Odd Parents and You know, Chucky and his gay sounding dad in the purple glasses. So yeah, videos got too long. But, you know, we're just not going to buy into our replacement and like it in the process. So go woke, go broke. Glad Elio bombed. And oh, and I was started to say the perfect example how crappy this town is. The other day we went to this fast food place that we go all the time. And we were literally told, the one white guy that I've ever seen working there was outside smoking or vaping. He said, ma'am, you can't go in there because there aren't enough people working for you to eat in the dining room, so you got to go to the drive-thru. So that's a perfect example of this town and how we cannot support good businesses, let alone movie theaters. It looks like every movie theater that I remember going to in the past is closed or converted into something else. So, I'm not driving 20 minutes on the highway, risking my life to see a stupid movie that's woke.